Welcome to the Developing Life Podcast.
Today we're asking, what if boredom and burnout wasn't the end, but the spark of a new beginning? What if stepping back from your work was actually the doorway to deeper creativity, curiosity, and joy? Few people embody that journey more than today's guest, Chris Martin. For over 2 decades, Chris has been exploring the edges of creativity through filmmaking, podcasting, writing, and teaching, building a career that's as curious as it is inspiring. In 2006, he founded Chris Martin Studios, partnering with creatives, nonprofits, and independent voices to help them share their stories with clarity and heart. A decade later, he launched the podcast Getting Work to Work, which has now produced over 900 episodes, earned a spot in the top 5% of podcasts worldwide, and become a go-to for anyone wrestling with creative work, curiosity, and career transitions. Today, Chris is writing his first book, A More Curious Journey, a reflection of his lifelong belief that creativity is not just about output, but about living with wonder. In this episode of the Developing Life podcast, hosted by Heather Crank, we'll talk about that powerful moment where the break becomes the beginning. Together, we'll explore what it means to heal creativity, to find laughter in the serious, and why curiosity may just be our best antidote to burnout.
Welcome, Chris Martin, to the Developing Life podcast.
Dang, that was amazing. Can you follow me everywhere I go? Because if I could introduce myself like that all the time, I think my life would be a lot more different. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. You've earned it. All right, so let's just get right to it. Several years ago, I stumbled across you and I was just drawn by your interview style. It's just fantastic. And I got in touch with you and we have kind of gotten to know each other over the years. My first question to you is, how did you start getting work to work? What led you to that?
I was teaching at the time at a local community college, and it was a class called Professional Practices. So this is a class where the students who are learning about digital media learn about business and interacting with customers or interacting with the public about their work. And so at the time, I was producing websites. And I was a WordPress developer pretty extensively around that time. And so I was sharing project briefs, comps, code that worked and didn't work, timesheets that went awry, where I lost thousands of dollars because I didn't bid a job right. And so I was just completely upfront and honest about everything that I was wrestling with. And a student came up to me at the time and just said, "Hey, I wish you had a platform outside of class that more people could interact with you on this stuff." And I think it was just the perfect timing for that, because after that comment, I launched my first newsletter in April of 2016. And then in June of 2016, I launched Getting Work to Work. And it was just, I think just that perfect storm.
So you produced over 800 episodes, and in the intro, Devron said 900 now.
Almost 900 eventually.
In
a year.
Well, how do you keep from burning out? And I mean, that's a lot of episodes. And also, how do you make time to dream? Because I feel like that's part of the process.
The problem, Heather, is I don't prevent burnout from happening. It is something that it happens every couple of years now, and that I just pour myself into these projects, and it has a way of just revealing what I need to let go of, what I need to focus on, and what is no longer serving me. And it's kind of weird because I think the conversation around burnout is, we need to prevent it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's like, no, what is it trying to tell you? What is it trying to teach you? And I think this last round of burnout was more instructive than I thought it was going to be, because it was just like, I came out the other side of it a completely changed person, in that I was able to kind of focus on what I wanted to focus on finally. Like the things that I had been talking about wanting to do for years and years, even decades, like I feel more comfortable doing that now.
What was the shift that allowed that?
I think the shift was twofold. One is that it was a really humbling moment in last year where I had to like go back to a job that I was at because I couldn't land anything else. Like last year I was struggling with grief, I was struggling with boredom, burnout. I couldn't sell my work anymore. And when you're a small business owner and you can't sell, you got a problem. You're going to have some problems paying your bills at that point. So I couldn't land a job. And so I actually called the hiring manager, or the HR representative at Home Depot that was local to me. I had worked there before, left after 4 months. And I went back and said, hey, is there any opportunity to come back? And that was a pretty humbling it was very humbling to do that. Because then you have to tell the story of why are you here again? What happened?
Oh, wow.
And that starts to clarify in your mind that story of burnout, the story of I was doing things I didn't really want to be doing. But then, fast forward to like last month when I was doing my taxes for this past year, I realized things weren't as bad as I thought they were. And so it wasn't really my business that was the problem. I was the problem. I had some things that I needed to learn. And so working, at Home Depot, that was kind of the, I guess, playground to learn an important thing about me that I hadn't really realized.
Were there specific indicators that burnout was coming, or were you just kind of in it all of a sudden?
Oh, yeah. There were very clear indicators. I love to read, and I just stopped reading. I couldn't pick up a book and focus for more than a minute or two. Wow. And so that was a very clear indicator that something was wrong. And then I didn't enjoy watching movies. I was just kind of numbing myself in other areas. And work I started getting mad at clients, not directly with them, but kind of behind the scenes. And again, that's not a really good recipe when you're running a business.
No, it's not. So now that you're kind of on the other side of this, what are your goals currently? And are you still working with getting work to work? Are you on a break or?
Oh, definitely not on a break. Around October of last year. So in June, I think it was June or July of last year, I paused everything. Because I don't just produce getting work to work. I have like 5 or 6 other side projects, from newsletters to a second podcast called Beyond Your Imagination. And so I just paused everything. And then in October, I felt that creativity starting to rise up again, the desire to say something. And I think November of 2024, like most people, was a very catalytic moment as to where I remember clearly just going, okay, I have a voice, I have a platform, I have things that I want to say, and it's, starting next year, I'm going to start saying them again. And I think that's kind of where I'm at today, of like just learning how to spread a message of hopefulness, of being a help to people, that creativity can build community. And yeah, there's things going on in the world that demand our focus, but there's also things that don't make the headlines because, anger rises to the top, not hope, not helpfulness, not enjoyment. So I think those would be my goals, is to share that message of just like, hey, we can use creativity for good. We can create projects that might not make a ton of money, but can actually make an impact on people's lives. we can actually enjoy our work without feeling like we need to work all the time.
Oh, yeah, that's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think it's not black and white. You can put your focus, you can be aware of what's happening that's difficult, but you can also continue to be a positive influence. I think there's sort of a lot of binary thinking that's happening right now. Speaking of that, we were talking about a logo redesign right before we went live. And you actually said when people put more emphasis on a logo than what's happening, we have a problem. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, like most people, whenever a giant corporation changes their logo, there's inevitably, the discourse around it. So people talking about, why are you making this change? And then you've got the logo designers who start making their own redesigns. And I think Travis Knight's was the best one, where he took Nosferatu and a death metal logo for Cracker Barrel. I'm like, this is great. But I think, when we are more upset with Cracker Barrel changing their logo than a school shooting in Minneapolis,
yeah,
we've got some reflection to do as a society, as individuals. It's not that I don't think people care. It's just they're rewarded for talking about Cracker Barrel. The algorithms reward them. The bots reward them. The systems reward them for things that ultimately don't matter. I mean, the Cracker Barrel, stock price did go up after they changed. Wow. But again, I guess who cares? It's Cracker Barrel. Yeah. Granted, I've never eaten there. I think there's one in the West Coast, but it's just, I don't know, who cares? Yeah. There's just so many other things to care about. And Cracker Barrel is not, unique here. It's happened every time a change has happened. And I think it's just easy.
Mm-hmm. I also think sometimes, we get so addicted to the algorithm or what we see, it even gets in our subconscious, and starts to mess with our identity or what we think is important.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of, you have a book coming out.
Gosh, the way you say that, it sounds so like for sure.
Well, maybe it's really for sure now. So this book coming out is a memoir, and it's all about curiosity. And speaking about identity and the way we're responding to things in the world and how important curiosity is, can you speak to why you're writing this book and why curiosity is so important?
Curiosity is important because when you're around people who aren't curious, you recognize how small their life is. And that's not a complete judgment of them or their life, but when you talk about the same thing with the same people over and over again, it just kind of gets dull. Life kind of loses its luster. And so for me, curiosity is one of those things where I want to be like my 90-plus-year-old grandma who was laying in bed one night because she was wondering how Oreo cookies were made. And she wasn't the most curious person, but I will hold on to that idea for a long time because, then I'm like, well, let me show you. I'll find a video on YouTube. And she's like, what is that? And it's just like, I think there's that joy and curiosity that says, what is that? Not in that's the devil on your hand, this idea of technology, being some demonic force or something, but this idea that there's something good in there that we can learn. So the book was this idea of there's never enough written about curiosity, in my opinion. And so the adage of writing what you want to read, I guess, is true. I wanted to read more about curiosity. I wanted to share some stories in my life that I hadn't really shared before. And I wanted to reflect on them too. So I like to tell the story that I dropped out of college to be in a rock band. But I like to think about all of the times before I dropped out, what life was like then. living up in Seattle, away from home for the first time in a big city. I mean, Seattle's a pretty big city for me, growing up in the country, but being able to explore those topics, I think would be good for me, and maybe for someone else too, because the subtitle to the book that I'm kind of sitting on right now is Finding Curiosity in an Ordinary Life. So many memoirs are just, the stories are just unreal. You read about these stories of people who have gone through horrendous things. And I haven't really been through anything horrendous. What gives me the license to write a book? Because my life is pretty ordinary compared to some of these memoirs I've read. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I've kind of landed on, is like, no, it's okay to have an ordinary life and to find those curious things and moments in there that lead to something magical and exciting.
So speaking of that, you have these monologues on getting work to work, which are one of my most favorite things, where you're doing just that. It's sort of like the audio version or the lead up to this book. So I'd like to hear about your thoughts on running a podcast in a production studio. And you had this monologue called Bored with AI, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's funny because AI is everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so there's always this discourse around AI of like, if you're not adopting it, you're going to be left behind. Mm-hmm. And I think at one point, I think it was the Sam Altman interview where he talked about, his kids will never be smarter than AI.
Yeah.
And I just kind of sat with that for a little bit, and it really prompted this monologue. And I think there was something in that article that I read that talked about we're living in the Jurassic era of technology. And so I just started the episode talking about, hey, fellow dinosaurs, kind of making light of the fact that we're treating people as if they're obsolete if they don't do certain things.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the genesis of that particular monologue.
You say if AI is being added to everything, to every system, at what point does it become more like high fructose corn syrup than sugar? Artificial, cheap, and addictive.
I like to write things that make me laugh. And so, or even make me like chuckle or think. And I just thought about AI being added to everything. Mm-hmm. And so, I read the labels like most people, not that it really helps too much nutritionally speaking, but like, at what point did sugar move to high fructose corn syrup? It's usually because sugar becomes too expensive. And so they have to find something cheaper. So that they can make more profit. Mm-hmm. And I think, thinking on this quote, I think we're in the sugar phase of AI. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, it's great. We're going to get people hopped up on the taste, on the interactivity, on the expectation. But then at some point, the companies aren't going to make enough money. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to switch the ingredients so they can make more money, but we won't really care because we're locked into these systems. And I just think, yeah, our tastes are going to change. Mm-hmm. Some people will boycott. They always do. Mm-hmm. But the question then becomes, will we be too addicted to do anything about it? Will society be too reliant upon system-wide implementations of AI to do anything about it? And I actually saw a headline on LinkedIn a couple days ago where I talked about AI is propping up the economy right now.
Seriously.
In terms of spending and in terms of keeping it afloat. And, that's going to be a pretty interesting bubble one day when that decides to pop.
Wow. That's
not to be a downer. Sorry.
No.
Wah, wah.
No, it's fine. I have another question. I was also going through all of your monologues and pulled out another favorite. Ooh. And in one of them, you said the reason you took a break to heal your creativity, and this is so important because last year and this year, the creative industry is struggling so much. On top of the burnout you're experiencing, you talk about your hibernation and you say, I grabbed a hammer and finished shattering the broken pieces. Can you talk about that process?
I think the world can break us down, but it never fully breaks us. I mean, it unfortunately breaks some people irreparably. But I think I was just broken to the point where there was nothing coming around to just complete the shatter. And I think part of being able to just shatter it completely was to go back to that humility, being humbled, and going back to a hiring manager and saying, can I come back? But it was also recognizing that, no, I'm okay. Like, you can go after these things that you want to do. You can become someone new. You don't have to rely upon explaining yourself as to who you are, why you wanted to do this, and why it didn't work out. I guess it was just, I get to rewrite the narrative once you shatter, because then you can be like, oh, I like this little piece over here. I like this little piece over here. Maybe I can fuse them together into something new. I think it comes down to identity. By that final blow with the hammer, I was able to kind of shatter my identity. And I have a lot more peace about who I am now than I did last year.
Wow. So given that process that you just went through, what are you working on? What's your goal? Where do you want to go from here as you're kind of starting in a different place? And we were speaking right before this podcast about the climate we're living in is kind of, for both of us, creating a certain internal reaction. I would love to hear more about that.
One of the biggest things that I learned when I was kind of in hibernation was that I had been neglecting a core part of who I was. So I'm someone who's very cerebral. So I'm constantly using my mind. I'm trying to like think through things, create things, but from that intellectual standpoint. But then there's also the feeling part. So I care deeply about things. I care deeply about people. And when I was at Home Depot, the best thing that I did was learn how to drive a forklift.
Oh, wow.
And learn how to work with my hands. And what I realized was that was a part of me that was missing. And so now I don't know if goal's the right word, but I'm learning. I'm in this evolutionary phase of learning how to combine those three areas of heart, head, and hand so that I can feel more complete as opposed to feeling like I can only be two of the three things.
I am hearing that so much right now that a lot of people are wanting to work with their hands. And I feel like it's a reaction to the hyper technology that's coming in where we're wanting to reclaim what's human. And there is something about the way we're wired in our brain where this tactile sense feels so good to us.
I agree.
So given that you're moving into this new era with heart, head, and hand, how do you see yourself moving forward? Are you going to continue working with your hands? Are you going to make things? Are you going to move into a different phase of your podcast? Are you going to interview different guests? What are your goals?
I think the nice thing about getting work to work is that it evolves when I evolve. So if you listen to the very first part of the show, it was very much from that lens of I was kind of a used car salesman. That's how I feel when I listen to the show in the beginning, because I had to project this voice, and I'm just like, whereas now it's more me, I guess, for lack of better words. I'm more able to share where I'm at today. Whereas then I was sharing where I was at then. I felt like I had to project a certain thing. And so, yeah, I would be more than happy to talk with people who work with their hands. They interview a lot differently than people who just wrote a book and need to sell it. And that's no judgment on the people who just wrote a book and need to sell it. It's just, there's a lot more, it's harder to describe sometimes the work that they do with their hands and what it means.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because it's a totally different process.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Sorry. So when you were growing up and you dropped out of college and you wanted to be in a rock band.
Yes.
Can you talk about your growing up process, what kind of band that was, and how you ended up teaching at the college in the first place?
Oh my gosh. Those are like 3 evolutions all in one story. I started playing guitar when I was 16 years old. Before that, I played trumpet. So in middle school, I started playing trumpet. I don't know why I picked trumpet, but I did. And let's just say Black Sabbath's Iron Man does not sound as cool on a trumpet. And so I think that's where I picked up the guitar. And I'm completely self-taught.
Sure.
What I did was, I grew up out in the country. I was a latchkey kid, single mom. She worked, obviously, to take care of the family. And so I was just often in my room alone. I would have headphones over a set of earbuds. So the earbuds was connected to my Discman. My headphones was connected to my guitar processor, because when you're learning how to play guitar, it sounds like a cat just went into the garbage disposal. And your parent, who is tired, does not want to hear you trying to play Iron Man on the guitar or whatever it is I was trying to learn at the time. And so guitar technology has gotten a lot better today. I think kids growing up today can really sound amazing pretty quickly. Whereas then it's just like, oh, this is horrible. So when I went to college up in Seattle, I went to the University of Washington because in my mind, the goal was I'm going to be a rich computer scientist working at Microsoft, playing racquetball with Bill Gates. Why? I don't know. This is just the story I weaved in my head. I had started to build web pages. And so this is the late 90s. I was a remote worker, interestingly enough. My first job was in Battleground, Washington. And the guy's like, hey, if you want to keep working when you're at school, that's fine with me. Wow. So it was a remote job, which was cool. And quickly I learned that I wasn't prepared for school. And so I wasn't prepared for the studious nature of what it took to be a computer scientist in the early 2000s. And so I went from computer science to business to art. And the reason I chose business, because it seemed like a logical, I'll learn accounting, I'll learn microeconomics. I learned that those put me to sleep. And so then I'm like, well, I guess I can do art. And I took a quarter of art classes, and then the opportunity arose to join the band. And when I listened back to the album, it was a prog band. You wouldn't call it a prog band then, but when I hear it, I hear Rush, I hear Led Zeppelin, I hear a lot of prog influence. I even hear prog influence in my own playing, even though I didn't listen to prog. But I hear that through my lens now because I listen to a lot of prog, thanks to Barry, who's in the chat here. But what was cool was just being able to hear how I was influenced. But it didn't last long. And so after that band kind of fizzled and fell apart, I moved back home. Then I went back to art school, worked for a season, and then went back to college. No, wait. I even get confused in my own story. But yeah, there's just a lot of, I just followed where things came. And eventually in 2012, 10 years after finishing college, I decided I'd get a master's degree. And then that master's degree led to, at the time, I was working on a series called Innovators of Vancouver, which was an online documentary series about people in the community. And it came across the desk of the college. and they were looking for someone to teach a certain class. And they're like, oh, hey, are you interested? I'm like, I've never taught before. And they just said, well, this is the opportunity. Does it sound interesting? Oh, and by the way, it starts in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And at the time it was a Flash class. And at the time I had been developing Flash games for training purposes at Boeing in Portland.
Oh,
and so it was pretty fun to then teach Flash and Flash programming to students. So that was my first class teaching.
Wow. That is an incredible journey. Wow. So I want to back up to the video part of your career. You and I had a conversation a few years ago. I think it was on Clubhouse, and we were talking about jealousy.
Oh, God, jealousy.
Jealousy.
Oof.
And
hits every day.
We went deep into this, and you spoke about a particular moment in your video career where you experienced jealousy. I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I am kind of embarrassed to admit, but I struggle with jealousy probably every day. Like, I see people who just launch a podcast and they get all the accolades and they have no problem wearing the label podcaster. And I'm like, it's taken me 9 years to like feel like I'm a podcaster. I'm so happy for you, but I'm also jealous of you. Jealousy is really hard because I think social media makes it really easy to get jealous of other people. When we see what they are presenting, what they are projecting, and I'm like, I'm not worthy of that. Was there a particular story? Because I feel like there's something specific you want me to get at, but I'm just like dancing around it.
There was a famous filmmaker who you worked with, but somebody else ended up getting the job that you wanted so desperately.
Wow, who was the famous filmmaker?
The name is...
Oh, no, I remember now. Yes. Oh my gosh. In 2012, I actually went to Haiti.
Yes, this is the one.
And I was hired to tell the story of this orphanage that this church was building. And, you know, it's at the time what I really wanted to do. I wanted to travel and tell stories. And, another example of telling people what you want to do, this pastor at this church we were at the time overheard me say that. And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yep. It's like, we can make that happen. I'm like, cool. Well, the year before, this cinematographer went, and he was a lot different of a person than I am. Like, he was like hiring cab drivers to take him to places that would get him the shot. And I understand this drive. Like, I understand that, but that's not me. Like, I'm the type of person that goes where the people are, fly on the wall, and kind of find the story within. Whereas for him, it was about these moments of visual interest, and, you know, the rules don't apply to me. And when I showed up the year later, they treated me like I was going to be like him. And so they locked down on what I was able to do. But at the same time, I felt that the expectation was that I was going to do exactly what he did. And so everything that I did on that trip was through that lens of, is this good enough compared to what this person did? And fast forward, this person would end up working with James Cameron. And I have no desire to work with James Cameron. Zero. But at the same time, it's just like, but you know, is that the real expectation that they have for me, to be on this level of someone who could work with James Cameron, or can I just be myself? And I don't know if I could have been myself, because honestly, at that time, I didn't really know who I was.
Wow.
Whereas if I were to go as I am today, I would have just been like, I don't care. I'm not going to do what that person did. Wow. I'm going to go find the story through what is deemed safe and appropriate through this organization that is housing me. I'm not going to be a jerk about it. Not saying he was a jerk about it, but you can read between the lines pretty quickly with how people treat you.
True. So we are at 12:35 right now. I would like to prompt people, if you have any questions for Chris, you're welcome to put it in the chat. I'm going to ask him one more question, and then I will go through your questions. At that time, you're also welcome to turn your camera on, Barry, if you'd like to speak to Chris directly.
I'm just burning through your questions.
You are, but we're right on track.
Good.
My last question for you is, right now, what are you reading? What are you listening to?
Oh my gosh, this is going to be the longest answer. So I wrote these down and I brought props.
Oh.
So in terms of what I'm reading, I'm reading this book called It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis. It was written in 1935. And as the back of the book says, in It Can't Happen Here, Sinclair Lewis crafts a chilling tale of a populist demagogue who rises to power in America, transforming the nation into a fascist dictatorship. This classic novel serves as a timeless warning about the fragility of democracy and the dangers of complacency in the face of tyranny.
Wow.
So that's a light read when I go to sleep. This book is called Future Tense.
Oh.
And it's subtitle How We Made Artificial Intelligence and How It Will Change Everything by Martha Brockenbrough. Since writing the Board with AI, I thought maybe I should learn a little bit more about AI. So that was that journey. This is a magazine called We Are Makers. It's a publication out of the UK. And it's just awesome articles about people making things with their hands around the world.
Wow.
I've been a subscriber of theirs for 2 years now. And it's just, it feels good to like support independent publications. And I love the smell of it when it shows up.
Oh.
It definitely smells like a independent magazine. Another magazine that I'm loving is this new one called Art Bar. It's brand new out of LA. And they have the best mission statement ever. It says, where's the line that I love? Art Bar is your handbook for the art life and your friend for the end of the world. And then finally, another one that I picked out was The Why and How of Woodworking.
Oh, I have that book.
A simple approach to making meaningful work. So that is a nutshell of what I'm reading. In terms of what I'm listening to, the podcast that I'm really enjoying right now is called The Creative Slash Podcast. It's a new show with Brad Woodard and Dustin Lee. Dustin Lee is the owner of Retro Supply Co. And so they talk about just not just like what we do, but the slashes in between what we do, which is in line with my thinking because I'm much more interested in being slashes as opposed to being one thing. People are always like, if you could pick one thing and do it, wrong question. I would much rather just be all of the things as opposed to being one of the things.
Me too. All right. Well, we've got some questions here for you, Chris. So I'm going to dig in. So Devron says, as someone obsessed with curiosity, how do you recognize when curiosity is guiding you and having a positive impact versus when it's distracting you? Do you have any practices or habits that help you break free from distracting curiosity?
I guess the first question I have would be, what would be a distracting curiosity? I think curiosity is always a distraction. It's just, there's just some times when I just feel that I have to go do this thing. Like if I get an idea for a monologue or if I get an idea for a project and it just won't go away, eventually I have to push everything else away and go do it. Or get it to a form to where I can like get it out of my head and go do it. So I don't know if I recognize when it's guiding me for a positive impact, because I don't know if I really think about it as positive or negative anymore. I just think about it, do I have time for this right now? Or is this a today thing or a tomorrow thing? But then there's just some times where I'm just like, I need to get out of here and just go do something.
How do you know? Like, what's the difference?
I can feel it in my mind when I just need to break free. Like when I'm too regimented, like when I have too many things written down on my task list, or if I've worked too much. That's the thing about burnout, is it made me realize how I know when I'm doing too much, because I just feel crispy. Or I feel like I just need to sit down. It's usually a good sign too if I apologize to my wife for being lazy, because then immediately she's like, you're just being a human right now.
Oh.
So it's one of those things where I think it's kind of how I feel sometimes. It's just like, if I feel like I'm being lazy, that's a good indicator that maybe I need a break from curiosity, or just need to to sit with it. I don't know if I'm responding clearly.
I think that's crystal clear. I also think there's such a stigma around laziness. I think that's a real problem for creative people, because I don't know about you, but I need space to be able to be creative.
Yes.
If you were to give some advice to people just starting out in the creative field around laziness, process, starting a podcast, what would it be?
That I actually do give this advice to people. Make the show you want to make. Don't make the one you think other people want to listen to. And I know that goes against all the advice that other people say, because a lot of people say, if you're not figuring out what people want and giving it to them, you're not going to make it, whether it's a business or a project. Or I don't think you're going to make it if you just do what you think people want you to do. And so I think, be lazy, be a provocateur. I like how you described Stefan Sagmeister that way. Do things that people won't expect. Don't be on social media. Don't use AI. Use AI. Be on social media. Have some agency about who you are and what you want to do, because that's what you want to do, as opposed to following some script or some rule that says you have to do that.
I love that. I've got a question here from Barry. He says, hey, Chris, you've worked at an amazing array of different jobs and tasks and creative outlets over the years. What are some of the projects that you felt the best about, whether paid or unpaid, or the stuff you've done just for yourself? Also, did you think of Cosmic Cathedral?
Okay, I'll start with Cosmic Cathedral. So one of my favorite musicians, his name is Neil Morse, and he is an amazing example of what creativity from an independent standpoint looks like. So, in his 40s, he lands his first record deal with a band called Spock's Beard. He finds God, leaves the band because he doesn't want to impose his beliefs onto the band members. And he creates this amazing career of music, this amazing catalog. He had a great working relationship with a drummer named Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater. And I think it was 2013, Mike leaves Dream Theater for a season, creates all this great music with Neil Morse. Mike gets back into Dream Theater, and now Neil's like, oh man, what am I going to do now? So he creates these side projects, these groups with people, and Cosmic Cathedral is one of them. It's fantastic. And what I love about it is it's a little bit more jazzy, more improvisational, as opposed to very formulaic. And so it's a great reminder, Barry, to go listen to it again. Thank you. But yeah, in terms of projects that I felt the best about, I mentioned the Innovators of Vancouver project, and that was one where 2010 was a much different time. Like, we look at docuseries now, it's like, oh, everyone's doing them. Everyone's got a camera and can make a documentary about something. In 2010, it was a little different. You were still watching things on cable. You were less watching them on YouTube. And so I was highly inspired by Sundance Channel's Iconoclast show. And so that created the inspiration for that documentary series. I was going to say podcast. But I was really proud of that because I did, I think, about 13 episodes over a period of 6 years. Wow. And it just, when I go back and look at them, they're rough, they're raw. And that's where I was at the time. So I'm really proud of that. I loved working with my friend Barry on a logo project. I think it was last year or the year before. Time is an illusion, but it was fun working with him on it. Got to do some cool lightning bolt designs. I love me some lightning bolt designs. So I love helping people too. So like, I've been helping my mom at farmers markets. And so she'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh, my son can help you. And so this lady lost her domain name, lost her website. So I helped her out this week, just getting her website back online, kind of getting it into a form that could prepare her for the future if she wanted to do online commerce. So I like doing stuff like that where I didn't even ask for any money. I just said, I'm happy to help you.
So I have one final closing question, and then I would love for you to tell us where we can find you, where we can find your book, where people can find your podcast, but also your writing. So my final question to you is, now that you've gone through this really intense process over the last couple of years, and I know you're not alone, a lot of creative people are really in the mix with this. What is your voice now? How are you going to speak out to the world? And what's your message?
I came across a line in one of the monologues recently where I said, I'm not trying to get listens. I'm trying to have a point. And I think that's where my voice is. If one person hears it and resonates, that's enough for me. And I think that's really what I'm trying to get at, is just share that so that I can help even just one person. I don't need a giant platform. I don't want to go viral. I just want to be someone who at the end of my life, at least one person will say, yeah, Chris, he was a great guy. I learned a lot from him. He helped me do X or Y. And I don't know, I think a lot about that because I think so often I spend my time in the past wanting to like have enough money or have enough accolades. Whereas now I'm just kind of like, okay, that's cool. Whatever. It's not that I don't care. It's just, I'm more interested in just being, I guess I would say.
That's beautiful. All right, Chris Martin. So can you please tell people where they can find your gorgeous podcast, your wonderful musings, your writing, and your upcoming book?
So I'll start with the website. So I use chrismartin.com. I bought that in the 1998 and have held on to it since. And that's kind of my writing platform that I'm turning it into. So I've blogged on that platform since 2007. So you can read some of my early writings about business and creativity there. And I occasionally go back and post on there, but it's not as consistent as I think the gurus would want me to be. And that will link to the newsletter that I have there for Chris Martin Writes, which is kind of like my writing and poetry platform on Substack. I mentioned Substack, but, like everything on the internet, it's transitory. Like, I don't know if I'll be there in a year. Who knows what happens to Substack in the next year, because there's a lot of hate around it and on it. So it'll be interesting to see where I end up in a year on that. I think instead, if I were to put on my hat of forward thinking, I might just go back to a web-based approach, building my own website, as opposed to building on someone else's platform. So chrismartin.com will lead you down that stretch of being. chrismartinstudios.com is my company's website. And so that is podcast, video production, that kind of thing. And I have a newsletter connected to that. That's called chrismartinstudios.substack.com. And that is Use Your Effing Voice is the kind of, I guess, message that I had this year for people. So every week I write about a different theme, or every month I write about a theme, and then each week I kind of dive into that topic. So this month has been all about courage. So the first week was about courage itself. Second week, values and courage. Week 3 was courage and systems. And then fourth was just examples of courage that I found in the things that I was reading. So that's kind of that road. And then gettingworktowork.com is that podcast. You can find the most recent 75 episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. About 5 years ago, I ran into the limit of RSS feeds.
Wow.
To where Apple was like, hey, we can't actually load this fast enough. So I guess you're going to have to figure something out. And so I just limited it to 75. But I have all 844 episodes on gettingworktowork.com. And I also have a short code, or short URL, so that if you have gwtw.co/episode number, so like gwtw.co/844, for example, will automatically redirect to that episode.
Okay. And where can we find your book, or do you have a goal date?
I have on chrismartin.com, there is a page for that. And it also links to some of episodes of Getting Work to Work where I read sections of the book. So there are episodes of the podcast that I've shared the book. I have a little post on my wall saying Monday, September 1st, 2025 is when I wanted to get it out. And then the question, have you worked on it today? And the question was, I have not worked on it since I put that on my wall. I have a lot of fear around it. I usually don't have a problem releasing things, but for some reason, I'm all up in my head around this project. It's not that I'm afraid of it. There's just something about it that maybe it's not time yet, or even though a friend of mine emails me constantly, says, I'm ready to buy it. Where is it? You know? So.
Okay. Well, we'll be watching for that. And I also would just like to take a moment to give you a shout out. Your platform is incredible. It's deep, it's rich, it's thoughtful. If you have not listened to Getting Work to Work, I really encourage you to check it out. Chris, his monologues have meant so much to me in some of my darkest times, and he has helped me and taught me so much.
Yeah.
Chris Martin, thank you so much for being with us on this podcast. You are so talented and so lovely.
Oh, thank you, Heather. That means a lot.
All right, everybody. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us again on Getting Work to Work, Getting Work to Work on the Developing Life podcast with Chris Martin, an incredible, incredible human.